War is everywhere in the world, and currently there is no shortage of countries fighting. It is either countries fighting civil wars, or countries fighting countries, or continents fighting continents. We are majorly concerned with the war between Russia and Ukraine, but I want to say that there are very many wars across the world which are claiming lives. One of these wars is currently ongoing in Haiti, and our big brother, the United States, has stepped in to help the country stabilize. The United States is currently working with the Kenyan government, I want to say so, to help send soldiers in Haiti to stabilize the country. But I find the United States move very critical. Why do I say that the United States move to Haiti is very critical? I am concerned with the United States foreign policy development, and I am concerned with this notion of bringing peace, restoring peace in the world. The United States has always positioned itself as a peacemaker. It has always positioned itself as our big brother, and it has always positioned itself as a pioneer of democracy. In doing this, the United States has always sponsored, let me say, wars. The United States is currently sponsoring war in Ukraine. Why am I saying that the United States is sponsoring war in Ukraine? Because it is providing funding and military weapons to Ukraine to help Ukraine fight Russia. Instead of bringing peace, engaging in diplomatic talks, the United States is sending weapons and funds to Ukraine. Remember, this was strongly criticized by the Chinese vice president. The case of Haiti is another one. Just recently, a few days ago, I read an article noting that the United States government gave the Kenyan government around 14 billion Kenya shillings to help them send soldiers to Haiti to restore peace. But the United States engagement with Haiti is not new. When we go back in history, we will find that the United States is the primary cause of the instability in Haiti. Why am I saying that the United States is the primary cause of instability in Haiti? When we go back to in history, in 1915, I was watching a documentary, and this documentary was showing that the United States once sent its troops, marine troops, in Haiti in the name of restoring peace. But what happened was very different. In 1915, according to that documentary, the United States government sent US Marines, around 3,000 US Marines, to invade Haiti. And during this invasion, the US Marines seized all the gold from Haiti banks. They seized all the gold from Haiti banks and all the money from Haiti banks, and then transferred them to New York. To confirm these allegations, I went and read a publication in the US Department of State archives, and this publication states that the US invasion and occupation of Haiti from 1915 to 1934. In this article, this is an article published by the United States government, the United States Department of State. It is saying that the United States government had been interested in Haiti for decades prior to its occupation. As a potential naval base for the United States and other imperialist powers, Haiti's stability was of great interest to US diplomatic and defense officials, who feared instability might result in foreign rule of Haiti. According to this article, the United States was fighting the likes of Germany and France in Haiti. The United States was able to cause instability in Haiti to drive away the likes of France and Germany. Now, the United States was fighting France and Germany in Haiti, and in this fight, it was sorry, it decided to create instability in Haiti. That was in 1915. This article goes ahead and says, just confirming what I said a few minutes ago, that increased instability in Haiti in the years before 1915 led to heightened action by the United States to deter foreign influence. Between 1911 and 1915, 7 presidents were assassinated or overthrown in Haiti, increasing U.S. policymakers' fear of foreign intervention. In 1914, the Wilson administration sent Marines into Haiti who removed, and mark this one, the Wilson administration sent Marines into Haiti who removed $500,000 US from the Haitian National Bank in December of 1914 for safekeeping in New York, thus giving the US control of the bank. In 1915, Haitian President Jean Vaubron Guillaume Sam was assassinated, and the situation in Haiti quickly became unstable. In response, President Wilson sent the US Marines to Haiti, claiming the invasion was an attempt to prevent anarchy. In reality, the Wilson administration was protecting US assets in the area and preventing a possible German invasion. The United States, according to the document which is published on the US Department of State site in the archives, the United States was interested in Haiti, and the United States was one of the primary causes of the instability in Haiti beginning in 1915. Now, when we look at history, the United States occupied Haiti and controlled Haiti for 20 years. Currently, I started this video by saying that the United States government has given the Kenyan government around 14 billion Kenya shillings to fund their mission in Haiti. I have a concern, and this concern goes to my viewers from the United States. The last time I checked, around 18 to 19% of our viewership was from the United States. I have a request to my viewers from the United States. I think it is time for you to question your government's foreign policy interventions, especially these interventions focusing on restoring peace, restoring global peace. You are the ones suffering because these funds are ejected from taxpayers' money. You pay taxes, and then your government uses these taxes to sponsor wars, to sponsor international wars. Your government is currently sponsoring war in Ukraine in the name of supporting Ukraine and preventing humanitarian crises. Your government has spent around over 110 billion on Ukraine alone. The same government of yours is currently spending 14 billion on the Kenyan government to Haiti to help orchestrate another war. You have a responsibility to question your government's involvement in foreign policy development. As taxpayers, you are the sources of these funds. You have a responsibility to question what your government does with your money. And I believe that you have a responsibility and a right to participate in this foreign policy development through your legislatures, representatives, let me say so. If it calls for protests against the government, then be it. Because currently, sorry, I would say that the government is wasting the taxpayers' money. The government needs to restore peace, not to sponsor war. The government needs to restore peace, to seek for peace, and not seek for war. Sending military weapons and sending funds to these countries in the name of supporting them to fight wars is the same as fueling these wars. If the United States government is committed to restoring peace, then it must engage in peaceful resolution of conflicts. That is my view. And I believe that the case of Haiti should raise an alarm to my viewers from the United States. The case of Haiti should raise an alarm to my viewers from the United States, which I have said are currently about 19%. If your government is concerned with your welfare, is concerned with your affairs, then it should focus on issues that directly impact citizens. Sponsoring foreign wars and providing funds to countries to sponsor wars is not the right track. The United States citizens, you have a responsibility to question your government's involvement in foreign policy. Assess these policies before it is too late.